Okay, here we go. All right, I want to talk with you folks about something quite odd, really. I want to talk with you about the problem with parachutes. All right, and it just so happens that the problems with parachutes are the exact same problems that persist with lifestyle medicine. And I want to share with you 3 of them this evening. All right, so here we go. Now, I actually really like parachutes. And I've only ever been skydiving once. In fact, we were in New Zealand, and we had about 3 hours to go before we had to be at the airport. And we were driving along, and I was with my wife and my good mate and his wife. And as we went past this road, and we weren't far from the airport, we looked over and said, "Hey, look at that! There goes a parachute!" And there was this sign that said, "Parachuting, come and join us," pretty much. We went, "Let's do it!" So we went in there. Inspired by my wife. She was the keen one, and we said, all right. Now, you've probably seen, if you've watched the ship videos, you noticed that I hang glide. But I went there, and I'll tell you what, as we climbed in this plane, I was terrified. And I remember actually sitting on the edge of this thing, and the guy, it was a tandem jump, obviously. You're going out with someone who knew what they were doing. And I remember sitting, so you're sort of strapped to them, but my guy looked slightly nuts. And I'm just thinking, I don't know about this. So I didn't enjoy the experience much at all. I confess to screaming, not a very masculine scream on the way down. Anyway, my wife, she was the calm one. And so she got down and said, "Wasn't that great?" And I went, "Yeah, I just feel weak." But anyway, I like parachutes because although I might not enjoy parachuting, and I don't know if I'd do it again, what I do like doing is hang gliding. And this is actually a photo that I took from my hang glider on the day that I got to my personal height record, which was 13,000 feet. So to get to 13,000 feet, what you have to do is you launch off a cliff, and there's some cliff way down here. These are the ridges where you take off from, which are about 1,000 feet, that ridge is. And you jump off this cliff, and then pretty much you go hunting for these things called thermals. And thermals are, if you imagine like a boiling hot pot of water, when the bottom gets hot, it lets off that bubble, and that bubble goes to the top. Well, the ground does that on days like today, when it's sinking hot outside. And those bubbles, if you fly, you can't see them, but if you fly into them, there's a lot of turbulence. But if you start to turn circles, you can actually climb up and climb and climb and climb. And the day that I actually got my personal height record of 13,000 feet, I was actually going up. I watched the ground disappearing at 1,000 feet per minute, going up in this thermal. Now, eventually, that's not actually up to 13,000 feet yet, because I went right up to the base of the cloud, and that's how high that was. But on the way up, I thought, I'm going to take a photo of this, and it's pretty rough air, and so I sort of went, like this, and that's the only one that's semi-in focus, because all the other ones were like, like this. And anyway, I managed to put my camera away at 13,000 feet. Let me tell you, when you are up at that kind of altitude, hanging open air, I mean, you've been in a plane at that sort of height, but you imagine being in the open air, only hanging by a little strap attached to your back, and you're hanging there in mid-air, just open to everything. The glider weighs about 1/3 of your body weight, and it's just made of this material. It's just an incredibly surreal experience. But let me tell you, when you're up there, you are really glad that tucked right in here, in the side of your harness, is a parachute. Now, I've never had to use it. I don't ever want to use it. Right? I don't want to ever have to use it. But it's such a comfort to know it's there. But the question is, why? Why would I be comforted by the fact that I have a parachute tucked in my harness when I'm getting up to those kind of altitudes? Because, do you know there's actually no good evidence that parachutes work? As highlighted by this paper that I'm just about to show you, and I love this. This was actually published in the British Medical Journal. It highlights the first problem there is with parachutes, and that is there is no good evidence that they work. Well, when I say good, what I mean is when you apply robust scientific methodology. And you're about to see too, the exact same thing applies to lifestyle medicine. Let me highlight this. This is the paper. This was published in the British Medical Journal, which is a very prestigious medical journal. And you can see the authors there, Smith and Powell. I love the title of this. The title says, "Parachute used to prevent death and major trauma related to gravitational challenge." All right, gravitational challenge. We all know what that's about. This is a systematic review of randomised control trials. Now, for those who are a bit sort of non-sciencey, let me just explain what they mean by randomised control trials. These are the gold standard of evidence that something works. And I'll explain what they look like in a moment. But essentially, these are the type of studies that the scientists look up to and they go, whoa, look at that. That's a randomised control trial. And particularly if it's what they call a double-blinded crossover randomised control trial. That's the best kind of evidence. That proves that this thing works. Well, guess what? These guys conducted their little literature review. Well, it was a little literature review of these randomised control trials to test whether parachutes actually work or not. And you won't believe it, but they concluded that we were unable to identify any randomised control trials of parachute interventions. Now, why would that be? Well, let me just explain to you, give you a bit of an insight as to why that might be by explaining what a randomised or double-blinded randomised control trial of parachute use might look like. This is what you do. First of all, you'd have some participants, right, who are going to be in the study. And I'm going to hazard a guess that no one's going to put their hand up for this once I've explained what this looks like. So then you also have the researchers over there. Now, for it to be a double-blinded, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that no one knows what's going on. Right, because then no one can bias the outcomes of this event. Right, so what you do is you get these participants who don't know what's happening, and then what you do is you get the researchers who don't know what's happening either, except that you have sort of some other people who would sort of help behind the scenes, but at least those people who are collecting the data, they don't know what's going on, so that's the researchers. Then what you would do is you'd get some of those participants and say, here you go, put this thing on your back. Now, they don't know what's in there. Right, there could be a parachute, right? Or there could be a box of tissues, all right? And so what you do is you get these people like this and then you say, all right, guys, what we need you to do now is to jump out of a plane, all right? Just go on, be brave, jump out of the plane and see how you go, all right? And so then we see what happens. This is what happens with a randomised control trial. And then the researchers, they watch and then they learn, all right? What's actually going on here? Now, this would be a double-blinded, randomised control trial. Can anyone understand or try and figure out why a study like this hasn't taken place as yet? Why couldn't those Smith and Bell identify any studies to put in their systematic review? What I'll point out is for it to be the very best scientific evidence, it would actually have to be a crossover, double-blinded, randomised control trial, which that means is that once you've done the study once, then you say, all right, switch backpacks, people, and we're going to do it again, just to test to make sure that there wasn't some sort of anomaly going on here. All right? Can you see the ridiculousness of this? Well, it just so happens that there is never, I'm assuming, I'm going to throw it out there, we will never see the results of a crossover, double-blinded, randomised control trial. So, scientists conclude that probably there is no good evidence to suggest, this is what happens, there is no good evidence to suggest that parachutes actually work. The same happens with lifestyle medicine though. Well, this is one major challenge that we've been up against historically. How do we demonstrate that, say, lifestyle interventions, programs like CHIP, are actually efficacious? How do we present the very best gold standard of evidence? This paper points out quite accurately that the current approach to evidence-based medicine, this evidence-based medicine is a good thing. We need evidence, but mandating that it has to be a double-blinded, randomised control trial. We don't want to know about it. And this is what they point out, that encourages physicians to ignore any information that does not come from a double-blinded, randomised control trial. Yet human beings cannot be blinded to lifestyle intervention. Can you see what's happening here? People know what they're eating when you give it to them. People know when you say, I want you to stand up and stomp your feet. People know when you're doing this stuff to them. And so therefore it's impossible to actually ever conduct a double-blinded, randomised control trial to test the efficaciousness of some of these interventions. That's a major problem, isn't it? And so what do we have to conclude? Well, is that, there's no good evidence by the gold standards that parachutes or lifestyle medicine actually works. What do you think, Hans? You're not liking where I'm going with this? I'm making a point. Even though there are case studies that would suggest otherwise. For example, this young lady here, Mackenzie Wethington, she actually fell out of a plane at 3,500 feet and her parachute didn't open. She hit the ground without it opening at all and survived it. Hey, is that proof that parachutes actually, maybe that's evidence that, yeah, you're right, maybe parachutes aren't the thing that are saving people's lives because people can still pull it off without one? You know, this is the kind of craziness that we get. We see the same with case studies for lifestyle medicine, like Beverly. You've heard her story. You've seen it in Chip. Here's a lady on death's door, seriously. I mean, yeah, I've met Beverly, incredible lady. But when she tells you what she was like before and then what she was like after, you know, when she's off insulin for all her diabetes, her peripheral neuropathy, her feelings coming back. This is just unheard of stuff by doing a Chip program. Improved retinopathy, eyesight improves. Surely, wow, that's amazing. You want to document that stuff. Is science interested in case studies like that? Often not. Well, it could have been the fact that she got a bit older. Yes, that would make sense, because everyone's eyesight gets better as you get older, doesn't it? This is ridiculous, but this is the kind of stuff that we often come up against. Or you got stories like Darren, my friend Darren. Is Darren here? He lives locally in Dora Creek. Incredible story. Here are the Darrens. Here's Darren. I mean, Darren had diabetes, obesity, or a whole host of different conditions. One of his major problems was he actually had renal problems. In fact, this is here his score for his, this is a kidney function test, essentially, to put simply. And what happens is that if you get down to about 15 on this kidney function test, you're on line for a kidney transplant. Right, so he's right at the border of having to go onto dialysis and go on the list. So Darren comes along and he does a Chip program, and within the space of several months, really, not even talking years here, several months, this is Darren's kidney function. It's since normalised. That is unheard of. Here's his doctor going, what on? This stuff just doesn't happen. People's kidney function just doesn't come back like this. What on earth is going on? But it's just a case study. Mackenzie fell out of a plane. She didn't have a parachute. What can we really attribute these sorts of things to? You think this sounds crazy, don't you? No, come on. Surely the medical community is not like that. And I'm not knocking the medical community, by the way. We're sort of part of it and we want to work alongside it. But here's how crazy it actually gets. This is a paper that we published on Chip in the American Journal of Cardiology, eventually. Right? We eventually published it in the American Journal of Cardiology. It documents the outcomes of nearly 5,000 people that have done Chip programs. You can sit around there some. Unbelievable. 5,000 people. Now we're talking about one person here, a Beverly or a Darren. We're talking 5,000 people. And guess what? When they started, about over 500 of them, 525 of them, so about 10% of them had blood sugar levels indicative of diabetes. Right? So these are American units because it's an American journal, so just forgive that for a moment. After 30 days, now only 301 of them have blood sugar levels indicative of diabetes. Right, this is just a remarkable result. That's 43% who came into the program on day one with blood sugar levels indicative of diabetes no longer had that status after 30 days. So we're pretty pumped about this kind of result. Surely this is the kind of stuff that makes people sit up and take notice and go, whoa, tell me more. And so I remember submitting this to the first journal and the reviewers' comments came back. We had two reviewers. One reviewer essentially reading between the lines said, I don't believe you. This is a true story, right? I don't believe you. Knocked it back. The other reviewer said, well, guess what? You don't have a control group. So how do you know it was the intervention that did that? I'm deadly serious. I can show you the documentation. They said, in the absence of a control group, which is a group of people that you put through and sort of measure them as well, but don't let them do the CHIP program, right? In the absence of them, they weren't willing to look at results from 5,000 people and say, whoa, I think there's something in this. This is worth publishing. Right? This is seriously how, in that paper it said about a moment ago about how physicians and researchers get biased against good evidence, what I think is really good evidence, just because it's not this double-blinded, crossover, randomised control trial. So here is the first problem with parachutes. There's no double-blinded, randomised control trials. Same problem with lifestyle medicine. I love how, and these obviously Smith and Bell here in this British Medical Journal I introduced, they were having a bit of a dig. It was a tongue-in-cheek article, but making a really good and valid point. This is what they concluded. They said, we think that everyone might benefit if the most radical protagonists of evidence-based medicine, in other words, all those people who are really demanding, no, if it's not a double-blind and randomised controlled trial, don't talk to me about it. We think it would be great for everyone if they organised and participated in a double-blinded, randomised, placebo-controlled crossover trial of the parachutes. Maybe, maybe not, yeah. So, here we go. Problem number one with parachutes, there's no good evidence, according to the most robust scientific methodologies, that they actually work, and the same applies to lifestyle medicine. Here's the second problem, though. Parachutes don't work if they're too small. Sort of stating the obvious, isn't it? Right? They just don't work if they're too small. Here is a guy who is a legend, friend of ours, Adam Parra. Adam Parra is a remarkable guy. In fact, we all thought that Adam had feathers somewhere on his body. He was a natural, just a gifted hang glider pilot. One of the best in Australia. In fact, I would say the best in Australia. He'd represent Australia on several times on the world stage. Incredibly gifted acrobatic pilot, and he's the kind of guy like Paul and I hang glide. And when the conditions are on, you race it and you just want to get off and get into the air. But if Adam was flying, often people would just slow down because they wanted to watch this guy. He was just so mesmerising to watch. Adam is telling me this story. He was in a competition. And in a competition, these people have to fly around a course. And they go up in these thermals, and then they race along, and slowly they get lower, because as you're out of the thermals, you're slowly descending. Find another thermal, get up high again. And they've got these checkpoints they've got to get. It might be a 100-kilometre course that they've got to race around. And often they, just like birds, they fly in a gaggle. So someone will find a thermal, and so they all jump into that thermal, and they climb up together, and then they race off. Well, he was in the process of doing that, and he was flying along, and these gliders fly fast. My high-performance glider flies at over 100 kilometres an hour. So these things really can gas them up. Anyway, Adam said he was flying with this gaggle, and they'd all got to the top of the thermal, and they'd all headed out, and he was flying really, really fast, and there was a guy in front of him about sort of 50 metres or so, maybe not even that, just in front. And he said as he was flying, he looked, and this guy obviously hit a bit of turbulent air. And then all of a sudden, his whole glider, the guy in front of him, has just tumbled over like that. The nose has gone under, and this thing has gone into a tumbling. And he was going so fast, he said, I almost hit his glider. I actually had to let my bar out and go over the top of him. And as I did, I looked down and saw his glider start to spin crazy fast. He said it was and I could see the guy hanging on the outside of this, like a centrifuge now, just getting pulled out and thrown out. And then all of a sudden, the most sickening thing happened. He said he watched the strap that attached the guy to his hang glider snap, and this guy flew away from the glider. And he knew, though, that the guy had a parachute packed in there. They all carry these parachutes. But the parachutes are designed for you to stay attached to the glider and go down with the glider. And he watched this guy reach, as Adam said, they're at 7,000 feet. And as he flew, just missed his glider, flew over the top, he watched this guy all of a sudden grab his parachute and then throw it and deploy it. And as he did, because he said it probably took about 6 to 8 seconds before he managed to do that. He was probably already going at terminal velocity. And as he threw the chute just went and just disintegrated. It was only a small chute. As I said, it was designed to go down with the craft, not too fast. And he watched this guy physically fall 7,000 feet to his death. Absolutely tragic story. Unbelievable. I'll tell you the rest of the story in just a moment. You know, it makes sense. If a parachute is not big enough, it's not going to work. Right? Parachutes just do not work if they're not big enough. But guess what? The same thing applies to lifestyle medicine. Lifestyle therapy, therapeutic lifestyle change doesn't work if it's not big enough. And you know what's a tragedy is that we get so many mixed messages out there nowadays. And you see this new study that's just come through and it says that lifestyle intervention doesn't work. You know, this particular diet, no good. Low-fat diet. It's only when you start to read between the lines that you get an insight as to how flawed some of those things are. Let me give you some examples of this. This is a study. The effect of screening and lifestyle counselling on incidence of ischemic heart disease in the general population. So they did a big study. And they concluded that repeated lifestyle intervention over 5 years had no effect on ischemic heart disease, stroke, or mortality at the population level after 10 years. This study, and this got well published and got a good press, British Medical Journal, they concluded that repeated lifestyle intervention and repeated lifestyle counsel had no effect on any of these things. In other words, you're wasting your time. Except when you read the methods. Guess what? That repeated lifestyle intervention involved 3 sessions over 5 years. 3 sessions over 5 years, and they're concluding it doesn't work. Let me tell you, folks, that is a tiny parachute. Isn't that a tiny parachute? This is insane. And you think, oh, well, how did that paper just slip through the cracks and get published? It's not alone. What about this one? This is in the New England Journal of Medicine. This doesn't get much higher, the impact factor, than this. And so they were interested in looking at weight loss with a low-fat diet. And obviously, Chip advocates the low-fat diet. We're interested in the results of this kind of study, wouldn't we? And what they found was no effect. I hate to break the news to you, folks. It actually has no effect. It was not effective. Putting people on a low-fat diet was not effective for promoting weight loss. Oh, come on, you can at least... Oh, it is. We're sad about this. So let's just look at the methods a little bit here and look what happened. And this is what we actually see. When the people entered the program, they were consuming a diet where about 31% of the energy was coming from fat. So they put them on this low-fat diet where they were now only consuming 30% of calories from fats. So they've reduced, right, 1%. This is their low-fat diet. They've reduced their energy from fat by 1%, and then been able to conclude from that, nah, they don't work. Oh, this got big press, didn't it? Can you remember this coming out? Some of you may have even seen this. Low-fat diets don't work. Stay away from them. Well, that's right. If you have a tiny, tiny parachute, like 1%, I'm not jumping out of a plane with a 1% parachute, right? I don't think anyone else is going to put their hand up for this either, are they? Crazy stuff. Here is a guy that believes in big parachutes, right? And obviously, many of you are familiar with him, Dr. Carl Esselstyn, good friend of Hans Essie. And what we know is that when it comes to fat and low-fat diets, he goes the whole hog, right? I found this little thing the other day. They're happy because they eat lard, right? This was proudly issued by the Lard Information Council in 1970. But I can tell you what, if that is the case, if lard is what makes you happy, Essie's patients weren't happy because there was no lard in that in their diet. He reduced it to about 9%, right, calories from fat. No, not 31, down to about 9%. What does he see? Well, that's a bigger parachute we're talking about now, isn't it? A lot bigger parachute, and this is what he sees, and you've seen some of these evidence. One of his colleagues, one of the doctors at the Cleveland Clinic there, this is his blood vessels in his heart, And then this is his blood vessels in his heart now completely open. You can see all the stenosis essentially dissolved because of this low-fat diet. That's a bigger parachute. Is it any wonder that you could make different conclusions from that than a 1% parachute? It's a crazy world, isn't it? It's a crazy world. So here we go. 2 problems with parachutes. They're the exact same problems we have with lifestyle medicine. Number 1, there's no good evidence they work. Just ask any pure scientist. Show me the double-blinded crossover randomised control trial. Well, we're never going to be able to. We can never blind people to what we're doing. And secondly, well, they just don't work if they're not big enough. And this is what I think is fantastic and, one of the genius of CHIP. CHIP is a big parachute, isn't it? And by getting those people to make those big leaps, not just saying, hey, let's take half the amount of butter on your toast and that'll do. And in 1 year's time, oh, really? It didn't work that well? Surprise! That's probably less than 1%, right? CHIP advocates that big jump. Get out of the ditch, take a big leap. And we start to see the potential for radical change. Here are the 2 problems, but I told you there are 3. And here is the last problem that there is with parachutes. And that is they don't work at all if they're not deployed. I'll finish Adam's story. Adam, amazing pilot, flying at Newcastle about 2 years ago, a very popular place. There's some cliffs there they call Strez Looky Lookout. Adam was probably about 500 feet off the ocean there over the cliff and doing aerobatics. And he was an incredible pilot, really. He would go into a dive and then he would go completely over the top, which is like a loop, come out, do another loop, just an amazing wing overs, fantastic. He was doing one of these manoeuvres and was coming out of a loop, and then all of a sudden someone turned and flew directly underneath him. And to avert a collision, Adam actually pushed the bar out, and what that did is actually rapidly increase the amount of G forces that he was pulling. And we've seen the video, and it seems to us that what probably happened is in that lying down position as he was coming out of a loop and pulling these tremendous amount of forces, that Adam blacked out. And the video shows that his glider went up to a very, very steep stall, and then all of a sudden it just started to tumble. Adam's hands came off the bar, and this thing just tumbled. He never even reached for his chute. And tragically, Adam actually was killed when he came down and hit the cliff. Massive loss for the whole hang gliding community. It actually, his story captivated a lot of interest because he was so well known and so highly regarded. Just a lovely guy. That's what it's like with parachutes. They don't work at all unless they're deployed. But the same applies to lifestyle medicine. It doesn't work at all unless it's deployed. And how do we get people across the line to help them deploy it? To believe in it, to see the potential of it. Because, what we know is at the moment we have this whole system. It's not a healthcare system, it's a disease care system. And we have these ambulance parked on the ground, ready for as these people without parachutes that don't deploy them hit again and again and again. And it's happening almost, it is at an advancing rate, a more rapid rate. And we've all been affected by it, haven't we? If not personally, or if not us, right? Certainly people that we care about and that we love. It's time to change that. It's time to start giving people parachutes. Not just little ones, but big ones. Big ones like CHIP. It's time for lifestyle medicine. I want to finish there, but before I do, I just want to say, look, we are obviously, everyone involved in CHIP and Sanitarium and Lifestyle Medicine Institute, we are very, very passionate about this space. And I know that you guys are too, and that's why you're here. And that really excites me. What I want to say is that you are part of a movement, because I see, as Hans indicated, the winds of change. They're here. They're coming. And we're actually seeing headway coming, that we're getting it. We're recognising that the ambulance down there isn't the best approach. And we're starting to see, even at higher levels, these parachutes coming out and opening all over the place. And I want to give you just a couple of insights as to places I see that happening to finish up. First of all, we see movements, we see associations like the Australasian Society of Lifestyle Medicine being established here in Australia. Now, lifestyle medicine's always had a bit of a presence in Australia, but we're just starting to see it go from here to here. And this is really, really exciting. There's a number of us at the Lifestyle Medicine. Actually, raise your hand if you're at the Lifestyle Medicine Conference in Melbourne. Yeah, last year in November. How good was the event? Seriously, if you get a chance, get along to the next event. There's one, it's in Sydney in September this year. Just amazing. The vibe there, it's a movement. This is what I love about it. It's not just, hey, this is a good idea. There are passionate, capable, caring people gathering together saying, this is a movement. This is the time to affect change and make a difference. There was like over 400 people there. And so really exciting to see associations like this starting to make some real traction here in Australia. They introduced their fellowship program, and Paul indicated that, that some of us were awarded that, which is really, really, really exciting. We've got things like the American Board of Lifestyle. In America, we have the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and that's been operating for about 11 or 12 years now. But once again, their conferences are just going through the roof. I actually spoke with, I missed the last year's conference, but Hans, I'm assuming you were there. I spoke with someone and they said it was like a big CHIP advertisement. And there were like 800 physicians there. Right, so CHIP is just having such a landmark impact in this space. Really, really exciting, especially in the US. They've now set up, in America, they've realised what they need is actually certification in lifestyle medicine, so that we actually have physicians who are actually lifestyle medicine endorsed, practitioners, board certified. And so they've actually just set up the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, and they've got their first group of people who will be sitting the exam for that in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine conference in Tucson this year in October. Sorry, so this is exciting. So that'll be the first time in America that they'll have board certified lifestyle medicine practitioners. Actually, I feel really, really humbled and honoured by this, but there's a team of 4 of us, and I'm the only international one, who are actually responsible for writing the exam for that. So if anyone's thinking about sitting it, I am open to bribes. No, I'm not really. I never said that. I'm only joking. But one step beyond that, we've actually got the International Board of Lifestyle Medicine. There are lifestyle medicine societies and colleges popping up all over the world. In Europe, in Lithuania, I think there's about 10 operating throughout the continent of Europe. We've got the Asian Society set up, but they're trying to create this international feel and flavour to it. And so there's going to be an international board of lifestyle medicine that almost oversees the whole lot of them. Really exciting to see this happening. In Australia, we're starting to see traction with these things called shared medical appointments. And I think this is partly the way of the future of lifestyle medicine. No longer, I think, is it appropriate for people to be going to a doctor and sitting there for 6 to 10 minutes. And, I mean, what can you do in that space of time? I mean, no, sorry. I shouldn't say there's not a place for that. But what I think there's a great need for are things like this, whereby instead of one person coming one-on-one with the doc, there are 10 to 12 people who come with the doctor for like 90 minutes. Because what excites me about that is all of a sudden the potential for lifestyle change. For programs, running programs like CHIP in clinical practice, how exciting will that be? That's a game changer. And we're starting to see these shared medical appointments coming to the fore more and more. I'm really excited about some of the things that the Adventist network are doing, and I'll just point out 2 really quickly to finish. And that is that here at Avondale, we've set up a postgraduate course in lifestyle medicine. This is the future. Welcome to the future, folks. Lifestyle medicine is the future. That's how I see it. We've set up a graduate diploma in lifestyle medicine, and with some faces in the crowd, part of it. I'm really pumped about this. I think it's a really great place for particularly the Adventist network to be operating in. Our course is now the only course that's endorsed by the Australasian Society of Lifestyle Medicine for people to become a fellow of the society. So that's really high accolades for us, and so we're really excited about that. And then the other big initiative, and you're going to hear more about this in the future, but the South Pacific Division of the Adventist Church have a great interest in making the Adventist Church leaders in lifestyle medicine. And it is such a natural fit because, as Hans pointed out, this has been core business. This has been core mandate of the Adventist Church for 150 odd years. And so they're developing a strategy that you're going to hear a lot more of. And yeah, it's very, very exciting. I won't say any more, but we're going to see a lot more interest and moving into that whole lifestyle medicine space. So look, there's a lot of really exciting stuff. I believe wholeheartedly and with all the passion I can muster that the time for lifestyle medicine is now. Right? And you guys are part of it. Right? We're all part of it. We're all playing our part in influencing, those from within our circle of influence. Just keep doing what you're doing, right? Because this changes lives and has incredible potential to change the face, I believe, of the well-being of our communities and our countries. Thanks for listening, folks.